Học từ vựng xong mấy hôm lại quên. Đến lúc cần thì chỉ biết gảy đầu, không nói nên câu. Thì nhất định phải xem hết video này, vì nó có thể cứu cả năm học từ vựng của bạn. Bắt đầu thôi!
All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive with us?
Always ready to dive in.
Well, today we're tackling something that I think a lot of us can relate to, especially if you're a language learner.
Definitely a common struggle for sure.
Yeah, it's this whole vocabulary thing. You sit down, you try to learn new words, maybe make some flashcards.
Right.
You feel like you're making progress, and then, poof, gone. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, where do they go?
Yeah.
Like they just vanished into thin air.
It's so frustrating. Like you put in all that effort and then it just feels like it was for nothing.
Yeah, totally. But the good news is we've got a really insightful article here that's going to help us figure this whole thing out.
Yeah. This article is awesome. It really digs deep into why it's so hard to remember new vocabulary. And even better, it gives us some really practical advice on how to actually make those words stick.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The article calls these the forgetting culprits, the things that make us lose those hard-earned words. So what are they?
Well, first up, we've got the lack of repetition. And this one makes a lot of sense, right? Our brains, they need those reminders. They need to see or hear a word multiple times to really cement it in our memory.
Yeah, it's like if you tried to remember a phone number after only hearing it once. Good luck with that.
Exactly. You need to repeat it, write it down, actually use it.
Makes total sense.
And then there's the issue of context. Learning a word in isolation, it's just not as effective as learning it as part of a bigger picture.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
So, think about the word melancholy. If you just read the dictionary definition, yeah, it might not stick with you. But if you see it in a sentence like, the melancholy autumn evening brought a sense of longing, now you've got an image, an emotion attached to that word. It becomes much more memorable.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like creating those connections in your brain, building a network of meaning around the word.
Right. And that brings us to the third culprit, passive learning. Now, reading is great, of course, but it's kind of like watching someone else play tennis.
Ah, okay, I get it. You got to actually get on the court yourself.
Yeah, exactly. To really learn a word, you need to actually use it. You need to make it an active part of your vocabulary.
So highlighting every word in my textbook isn't going to cut it, huh?
Probably not. And lastly, we have information overload. It's tempting to try and cram in as many words as possible, but honestly, it's just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, it's like trying to stuff a suitcase that's already bursting at the seams. You're just going to end up with clothes all over the place.
Exactly. And probably a broken zipper. So better to take it slow and steady. Focus on a manageable number of words each day.
Okay, so we've talked about why we forget words. Now let's get to the good stuff. How do we actually remember them?
This is where the article really shines. It gives us a bunch of proven techniques that are backed by science. And the first one is to ditch the isolated word approach. Instead, learn words and phrases.
So instead of just memorizing the word run, I like to run in the morning.
Exactly. That gives your brain more context and makes the word much easier to recall. And another powerful technique is spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition? What's that?
So it's basically the idea of reviewing words at increasing intervals to really beat that forgetting curve.
Yeah.
There are tons of apps that use this, like Anki Quizlet, even one called Mochi Mochi, which is specifically for Vietnamese.
Oh, wow. There's an app for everything these days.
Right. And spaced repetition, it just works. It taps into how our brains naturally form memories. And it's way more effective than cramming.
I can imagine some people might be hesitant to try spaced repetition because it does sound like you're studying more often.
Yeah.
But is it really worth it in the long run?
Oh, definitely. It's all about working with your brain's natural processes rather than against them. So you actually end up remembering more with less effort in the long run. And speaking of working with our brains, another tip the article mentions is to use visual and auditory aids.
Like pictures and sounds.
Exactly. Engaging multiple senses can make a huge difference. Think back to how you learned as a kid. Remember those picture dictionaries?
Yeah. I love those.
Those were tapping into this very principle. And you can apply this as an adult too. Use flashcards with images, record yourself saying the words, get creative.
Oh, I love that idea. It's like taking your vocabulary learning to the next level.
And another really important point the article emphasizes is real-world application. Actually using the words in real-life situations.
So like writing stories, having conversations, things like that.
Exactly. This is what they call active recall. You're forcing your brain to actively retrieve the information, which strengthens those neural connections.
So it's like giving your brain a good workout.
Exactly. And the more you use those words, the stronger those connections become. The article also talks about the power of thematic grouping. So learning words related to specific themes like food, travel, work, whatever interests you.
So instead of just learning random words, I should focus on learning words related to a specific topic.
Right. This helps you build a mental web of meaning. It's like creating a little vocabulary neighborhood in your brain.
I love that analogy.
And lastly, the article really stresses the importance of setting small, specific goals. Don't try to learn 100 words a day. Start with 5 or 10 and focus on really mastering those.
So it's all about consistency over cramming.
Always. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to vocabulary learning.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today.
Huh.
I'm already feeling more confident about my own vocabulary learning journey. Now, before we wrap up, I know this article also has a fantastic resource roundup for anyone who wants to take their learning to the next level.
Oh yeah, it's packed with good stuff. There are language learning apps like Duolingo and Memrise, which are great for interactive practice. Then you've got your classic vocabulary books like the Oxford Picture Dictionary and the Vocabulary in Use series.
And of course, we can't forget about YouTube. There are tons of awesome channels out there like Learn English with Mr. Duncan and VOA Learning English.
And let's not forget about good old-fashioned flashcards.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of flashcards. They're simple, effective, and you can totally personalize them to fit your learning style.
Right. And the best part is you can take them anywhere with you.
So many great resources out there.
Definitely. And the key takeaway here is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to vocabulary learning. Experiment, try different things, find what works best for you.
So to sum it all up, it's not about brute force memorization. It's about understanding how our brains learn best and using techniques that actually work.
Exactly. Make it fun, make it engaging, use those different senses, and most importantly, be consistent.
So the real secret to mastering new vocabulary is to just keep at it.
Exactly. And on that note, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Now that you've got all these tools and techniques, what area of vocabulary are you going to focus on improving first?
That's a great question to ponder. So think about that. And in the meantime, we encourage you to check out all the amazing resources we've mentioned today.
Yeah.
And hey, if you have any vocabulary learning tips that have worked for you, we'd love to hear them. Share them with us on social media.
Yeah, we're always looking for new ideas.
All right, everyone. That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Happy learning.
Happy learning, everyone.
See you next time.